If we as communicators don't recognize that the way people consume media has changed, then we're going to fail to actually address their specific needs. So if, for example, I'm consuming information on a cell phone, you can't give me the same kind of story as you would have given me on a newspaper. And I think very often when we are looking at, as communicators, when we look at these platforms, we see it as a one-size-fits-all. We think that if we craft the right message, we'll build reputation by simply going out and repeating that message. But the reality is the way people consume now is a lot more sophisticated. Not only that, but we also want to be able to consume media and then for that experience to be interactive. And so very often what organizations are not doing is giving their audiences an opportunity to feedback, to be able to speak back and to respond. I think one of the big challenges for organizations is their inability to understand and to articulate their own story. And so very often when they're on social media, they're using public relations techniques to engage in a platform that actually is very human, where people want interactive experiences and they want to be relating to real people. So I think for organizations, one of the major things is not so much to think about what are my key messages, but what does this organization embody? What is the personality of this organization? What are the values of this organization? And then to be able on social media to live those principles, those values that they embody, so that their audiences can actually engage with them in a real human way. I think the biggest issue about new media is that we really are looking for authenticity. If before you were able to actually get away by simply saying what you thought people needed to think about you, you can't do that anymore, because what we have is a democratization of media. Anyone with a cell phone can go out there and publish information. And so if you're not actually living your messages, if you're not authentic in the way that you relate to people, anyone can actually pick that up and say, hang on a second, my experience with this company is not what they say. I do also think that very often organizations do believe the spin of spin. You know, that if you craft a good message, if you put it in, if you publish it in ways that are attractive, that eventually people will believe it. And so you find that organizations are asking their public relations companies to sell something that actually is not reality, or sell something that is at the very least dishonest. And so that's the disconnect I often find, is that organizations are trying to sell a message that isn't real, and public relations companies find themselves in the middle of crafting messages around a behavior that can't actually be proved. With social media, you can no longer make communication an afterthought, an activity at the end of the process. It really needs to be integrated in the strategic development of an organization. So when you're doing your vision, mission, values, your communication team needs to be at the center of that activity, because that's part of the process. You know, who am I out there? What is the reputation I'm building? And in fact, what happens is that the strategic developers go and they meet and they decide that this is who the organization is. The marketers are part of that process, the producers are part of that process, and at the end of the line they then hand over to the communications people and say, give us a status update for Facebook. When the reality is that you can't do that unless you have a real understanding and intimacy with what this organization is about before you go out into social media platforms. My argument is that really communicators need to be part of the strategic development of an organization, because that's where we are. That's a society we live in. It's an information-driven society, and if your communicator doesn't actually understand the business, then really, excuse the pun, but you have no business going out there to the public.